All right. Well, I am Karla Kyte with Cross Country Mortgage. I'm a CDLP, and today I have John Hoelle joining me for the interview. And John, I'm going to have you say a little bit about yourself, but from what I know about you is that you are an attorney, but you're very unique because you choose to handle your family law practice as more of a mediator, which I think is really awesome. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself and kind of talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks. I'm definitely not the only attorney who's focusing on mediation, but I do think our firm is pretty unique as a firm that really is focusing on mediation. We're a family law firm. That's all we do. We have 4 attorneys, and we all 4 of us really do focus on mediation. We've been around since 2014, and have really focused on developing a soup to nuts sort of full service process for folks who are navigating legal transitions in their family. Sometimes folks getting married, helping them with prenuptial agreements that are really supportive to their, creating a new family. But the bulk of our work is helping folks on the other end transition out of marriage in a way that is collaborative and holistic in terms of treating their family as a whole, and helping them come out the other side of it still some kind of a family that hasn't just been really destroyed by the process of the legal restructuring. So it's really been I'm really grateful to be able to do this work and help families avoid this sort of needless kind of carnage and both emotionally and financially that the conventional divorce process in particular comes with. So we still do advise individuals in some cases in what we call in the legal world an unbundled capacity, which means we're not a full service attorney, and as of 2021 we stopped taking any cases to court. So we don't really pursue litigation on any front, but we do still sometimes advise people in the background who are trying to maybe do a collaborative kind of harm-free approach, but maybe mediation isn't appropriate, or one side doesn't want it or something like that. So we do some of that, but almost exclusively focus on mediation.
Okay. So I've talked to a couple of people about you, and I've said, I don't know why he chose to go this route. So I don't know if that was, just like a personal thing so that you can sleep better at night or what. So maybe you can explain a little bit why you guys choose to go this mediation route instead of the litigation and the high conflict and so on.
Yeah, great question, because the financial incentives don't really point in this direction, which I think is why a lot of attorneys don't necessarily focus here. Quite frankly, attorneys earn more money when they're advocating for one side in a adverse situation, where they're where there's 2 attorneys and they're kind of battling each other to some degree, and kind of there's some gamesmanship that is sort of built into the lawyer training in a way, and even the ethics behind the profession are, a lot of attorneys take it as, oh, this zealous advocacy of one side is kind of what we're supposed to be doing. And so I think the answer to your question as to what took me specifically in this route is I'm a father, and in my early days of my practice I did have a litigation practice for a number of years, and it's just really obvious how damaging the conventional legal process is to families, and especially kids who get kind of caught in the middle. Because even folks who want to be doing right by each other get caught in the basic process, which is called an adverse process. It's just really needlessly harmful, and so I really didn't want to be doing that, and I wanted to find a way to any way to practice that was sort of different than that. And I got trained in what's called collaborative law. That's another modality that we practice in at my firm, where there's collaboratively trained attorneys on each side of the case, and there's a lot of great aspects of that process. It's a little cumbersome and a little expensive for most cases. I think a lot of cases don't need that level of firepower to have these kind of two collaborative attorneys and this neutral facilitator in the middle and another financial expert. So there's often four professionals that are working in these cases. Sometimes it's really that's a useful process. And I like a lot of pieces of that process, but I said, there's a lot of folks that really just don't need that much, and they can really get what they need through one attorney mediator functioning to help guide them, explain the basis of the legal landscape in a way that's neutral, so that it's not, I'm not giving legal advice to either side or even really both together. I'm just helping guide them, giving them information, helping facilitate conversations. And that's really all that most people need. I mean, we took the kind of collaborative approach and said, well, what can we take from this and utilize in this mediation approach? And so we do bring in a team when needed, right? So we do bring in a financial expert when that person would be helpful, right? If there's enough complexity in the case that sort of tax knowledge and financial planning knowledge would be useful. Sure. We bring in people like yourself, lending professionals, who can really bring a lot of important information that we don't have, that's not our expertise. And that'll include consulting attorneys from time to time. If there's, somebody needs, one or both parties may need some legal advisement beyond what I can provide as a neutral. Sometimes child experts to help folks understand what's in the best interest of their kids. I'm not a child development expert. So we bring in people right as needed. We add team members as needed, but that helps keep costs low. And yeah, personally, I'm by nature more suited to being a neutral, guiding kind of people through something than I am as an advocate for just one side. And I think that varies from lawyer to lawyer. And again, the training is a little bit more like, battling for one side. But there's certainly I think a number of us, any of us who might have in their path maybe to a judgeship at some point, right? Judges are neutral. Yeah. So if you have something like that in your system, it's really been a rewarding way for me to practice. So I'm proud of the fact that we focused in mediation while still being a law firm, still keeping our legal knowledge and experience up to speed. We all, even though we don't take cases in front of judges, we're all very active on the listservs that kind of talk about what's going on in courts day to day. We're reading court opinions. We're constantly have to keep up our legal education credits with what's going on in the law. So right. We're definitely bringing that expertise into the room, just in a way that's neutral to the parties.
I love it. I think, obviously it's very unique. Like you said, from a money perspective, it's kind of like, why are you doing this? Right? That it doesn't make sense that you're doing this, but you're doing it for the right reasons. And so it does make sense. I think it's very unique. And I think it also, it kind of puts you at that top level of a mediator. Because from what I understand, and I could be totally wrong, but I was told that mediators don't even have to have any kind of training or anything. They can just call themselves a mediator and they can start mediating divorces, right? That's true, right? You don't have to have anything. So you've come all the way from up here and kind of come down to do the mediation work, I feel like. Is that wrong? Or
maybe in terms of right,
education?
Yeah, you're right that anybody can hang out a shingle as a mediator in Colorado. There's no certification or anything like that. And so it's an area where you can absolutely specialize in terms of gaining skills as an attorney and utilize your training in that way. And you know, I do feel like it's, if you're dealing with a family law issue and you go to work with a mediator who's not a lawyer, you're probably not going to get what you need. Because if the mediator doesn't have family law experience, they're not going to necessarily know how to guide you through the kinds of things that you're going to have to be navigating. And so either things are going to be missed, or when you run into certain kind of nuanced areas, they may be able to help facilitate conversation between, you know, the two parties, but they're not going to be able to guide those parties into agreements that are going to comport with the law, that the court is going to approve, because the court has to review and approve all private settlements. And they're not going to be able to help the parties arrive at agreements that are going to work. You know, and again, that's one of the reasons why we do rely on other colleagues, you know, to come in. Like I bring in financial experts because I don't want clients calling me up in 5 years like, well, this sounded fair. This agreement seemed good, but oh, you know what? It didn't work actually for my goals. And I don't want that call. So yeah. So I think bringing in the right professionals is sort of imperative, you know, and not that there aren't good mediators out there who aren't attorneys, but I think in the family law arena, trying to get by without any professional guidance from somebody who actually really understands the intricacies of family law, which are fairly complicated. My partner often talks about, you know, he learned a lot of areas of law in his decades of practice, and it took him a while to learn family law, because there's so many nuances to it. And judges have so much discretion really to look at the case and make rulings that are case specific, that if you sort of don't understand how that works and how judges think, you're not really going to be able to guide people in terms of how a court's going to review things, and especially if they don't agree, what it's going to look like if they had to take those kinds of disputes in front of a judge.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely had people try to go through this, you know, go at it on their own, and then they call me because they were denied by the judge, and so then they need somebody to kind of step in and help them. So I can imagine if you're working with somebody that doesn't have a lot of experience, that same thing can happen, especially if it's complex, right? So so in your experience, is there one, or if there's more than one, but is there a really memorable case that you've worked on where you feel like you as a person really was able to help the couple through the untangling?
Yeah, you know, it actually, the one of the most memorable cases was not one that I was directly involved in. It was one that my partner Peter was mediating, and it's so memorable because I ended up shooting some video that's actually on our website. It's a video testimonial of the wife in that case, who just really spoke so eloquently about how she came into the case thinking she would never think that giving away any parenting time to her, the father of the kids, would be in the kids' best interests. And through the process of, you know, mediation in our format, which often involves both parties together, either in the same room or the same virtual room if we're working remotely. And so that there's something about that too, that, you know, it's not always easy. I mean, it forces people to advocate for themselves in a way that they might not have done during the marriage. They're not just handing it off to an attorney to do their negotiating for them. They're having to step up and find their voice, with the help of the mediator in the room. But she came through this process, really understanding that equal parenting time was in her kids' best interests. And that was such a profound shift for her. And I've seen similar kinds of things happen. But this particular case, the way she speaks about her transformation as an individual, growing through the process. I mean, divorce is such a common thing. I've been through it myself. And in our culture, it's almost the closest thing to like a rite of passage that so many of us go through. And a rite of passage is really about growing into a new level of being in the world. And so if people like her, that's really our favorite kind of case, is when we can help people kind of leverage this difficult kind of chapter in their lives in that kind of powerful way.
Yeah, that just reminds me of I was speaking to a woman a few weeks ago, and she's actually a divorce coach now as a result of her divorce. But something that was so interesting was she said, sometimes you need a divorce coach after your divorce. And that didn't make any sense to me. But what she told me was she was so mean and nasty during her divorce. 2 years after her divorce, she was friends with her attorney. Her attorney finally said, you need to figure some things out. Like this is kind of more on you. So she kind of had that light bulb moment, I think, like you're saying about this woman, where she realized like, oh, I need to be a little bit nicer here. I need to, I'm going to have to communicate with this person. We have children together forever. Right. So we need to kind of figure some things out. And as a result of that, that's kind of the work that she does now. So it is cool to see that transition. I don't get too involved in that. But I do let people know that there probably will be a time during the process where they need something from the other person. And it's always better if you're maybe a little bit nicer during the transaction. Because I see it too. I see those emotions go, all the way through the transaction. So it is a
it starts with just the simplest thing is just approaching things with curiosity. What's mine, what's theirs, and just being curious about that. Because I think it's so easy to come into this process just with a sort of hardened assumption, it's really all their fault or, whatever. And so just staying open to, okay, what parts of this are me?
Yeah. I love that. So hold on. I have these questions over here. So as far as when people are selecting a mediator, I also was on a call yesterday with somebody who was, I don't know why, but she was very upset with her mediator, and she was looking for somebody else. I actually gave her your contact information. But what is it that you would say for people to ask about? Like, everybody's not going to be a fit for John, right? So what are the questions that they should ask? Or maybe what are questions that you ask because you might have a client that comes to you and you're like, this is not for me.
Yeah, great question. In terms of looking for a mediator, and I think kind of what you're talking about is finding a sensibilities match. I mean, we look for a sensibilities match for us and our clients, and I think our branding does pretty good work for us there. That when people come, they look at our website and they sort of read about what we're up to, they self-select in to our practice. So that's great. And but yeah, I mean, if you're looking for a mediator, I think again in the family law space, finding an attorney I think is really pretty important. And having Colorado family law experience, I think, is pretty important. Family law is state by state. And
Mm-hmm.
so, there are a lot of attorneys who relocate here from other states because Colorado is such a great place to live, and that's great. But if you haven't practiced family law in Colorado, there are some conceptual and procedural things that you're going to be bringing from another state. So Colorado experience, I think, is pretty important. I think collaborative training, in addition to your basic mediation training, I think the collaborative law training is really useful. So if they have that, I think that can be really helpful to, in terms of their ability to help you navigate something collaboratively as opposed to adversely. If they're, I would look for somebody who's asking about your goals. And that really goes to whether you're looking for a mediator or for an attorney. I mean, attorneys sort of are, I think they can easily slip into this place of, I know what's good for you. I know what's in your best interests. And so I think, somebody who's asking what your goals are and really helping you get clear about those, as
Yeah.
opposed to just filling in the blanks for you, is what I would be looking for. I think looking for somebody who's willing to push you at the same time, not just sourcing everything from you, but actually challenging whether what you think are your goals, are they your actual goals? Are they the goals that are your sort of high selves goals, as opposed to just kind of in this moment. And, we sort of guide our folks through a little visualization when they start with us to anchor themselves in a happy moment in their future, and using that, kind of tapping into that wisdom and perspective of their future self, right, to guide them through the actions and decisions they're contemplating making in the present. So we're looking to challenge people, and I think that's something to look for.
I love that.
And
Yeah.
then and then again, is the person you're looking at, are they themselves open and encouraging collaboration with other professionals, like I was talking about,
Yeah.
other attorneys, other financial experts, lenders, child experts. Yeah.
Yeah. And open to hearing what the law is too. Cause I find that to be somewhat of an issue too. And then with their goals, I think sometimes when they come into this, they have a certain goal, but then once they realize what all that entails, that they change their mind. I mean, that's around the house a lot. So I'm dealing with that a lot because they'll come in, I have to keep the house, I have to keep the house. But then when they realize the cost of keeping that house, then sometimes that changes that goal for them, right? So
Absolutely. Yeah. Once people, we often have people come into our practice who have had extensive conversations with each other, and they think they have a pretty good idea about what their settlement is. But then when they both understand the sort of legal landscape better and what their legal rights and obligations to each other are, those agreements will shift and their
yeah,
goals will shift along with it sometimes. And sometimes it's a good litmus test on how generous one person is actually being. Maybe they think they're being really generous, but okay, maybe they're not being so generous or something like that.
right.
So people do their goals do shift as they come in, which I think is totally normal and to be expected.
Yeah. If you, I guess what kind of if you just wanted to give kind of a heads up, to somebody that's just getting started in the process, what would that be? That's a pretty broad question, I know.
Well, it's one that we've thought of because I think the thing I would say right out of the gate is that if you are contemplating a potential legal transition in your marriage specifically, don't just call the attorney that you got referred to, by your sister or your neighbor or whatever, because really that first phone call that you make can really be profoundly important in terms of which way you're headed down this road. And if you start talking to the wrong attorney, it can just take you down a potentially bad road. So I'd say just do your research, you know, learn about what the collaborative process is about. If you want to talk to a collaborative lawyer, you want to talk to a mediator first, just to learn about what that looks like. And maybe mediation isn't for you. I mean, we've had for a long time on our a website a kind of a questionnaire about like, is mediation right for you, or do you need your own lawyer, right? Because there's a lot of cases where mediation is not appropriate, and so it's a little quiz you can kind of, you know, plug in, answer some questions. Like if there's major mental health issues or substance abuse issues, you know, that those are flags, right, as to whether the two sides can kind of equally show up and be engaged in a productive process. So, but yeah, but do the research, and don't just call the first attorney, you know, the name you get. And then the second thing is, if your kids aren't already in some kind of counseling or have some kind of professional support, I'd say the sooner you can get them into that, the better. It's just any this kind of transition is challenging for kids no matter what, and so if there's ever a time to have just a little extra professional support for them, it's now.
Yeah, that's great advice. I also have what I find just in talking with consumers, and when I'm teaching my realtor CEs and so on, I'll have a lot of conversations after with some of the agents that kind of hang out. And what I find a lot of times is people one, don't know that you exist. They don't know what a mediator is. They don't know anything about a collaborative process. They think divorce, they think attorney, and especially when they are high net worth, if they're complicated, you know, like if there's self-employment or there's, you know, other whatever owned businesses, they think they have to use an attorney, even though they're very amicable. You know, and I mean, I know, but I mean, do you want to maybe talk to that a little bit? Because if you have somebody that's perfectly amicable, but they're just very complicated, how do you help them?
Yeah, I mean, again, it may be important to bring in. There was a case I had recently where there was some pretty complicated trust interests, and so, you know, valuing a trust in divorce is one of the most sort of thorny areas of the law in especially in Colorado.
Interesting.
And so, yeah, there was a trust valuation expert attorney that had to be brought in on that case early on. So, yeah, again, if there are specific kinds of complexities like that, that's not a problem to bring in the right people to help. I mean, there's businesses that you know, we bring in a business attorney to help structure some of the agreements, to kind of like be in concert with the business dealings that are kind of to the side of the divorce, right? So yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I find that high net worth folks in particular, because they're more familiar with dealing with attorneys, that is the first place they'll go. Think, okay, I need an attorney for myself. You know, I get that, and maybe they should have an attorney on their side as well. But I would start the process. I would look at mediation to see if that's something that is, you know, makes sense for you, and start there, and then see what other professionals need to be involved.
Sure. Yeah, I love it. So, is there anything that I've kind of left unsaid here that you wanted to mention in this interview? I think we've covered quite a bit, but
we have. You know, I think that I spoke to it a little bit already, but I guess I would just cap off reiterating that mediation is it generally, I think, has such a better outcome for most people, because they really are coming out of a process co-authoring their future, co-architecting something, as opposed to you know, leaving it to attorneys to kind of do the dirty work for them, or in the worst case, leave it to the judge to make the decisions for them. Even though it's like going to require some some difficult conversations, some sweaty conversations, you know, about some of the details. Coming through that process with a felt sense of, hey, I was able to have those conversations with this other person I'm having I'm in breakdown with. I'm usually a challenging communication dynamic, but you know, I was able to get through these sweaty conversations, get to something that feels at least okay. You know, it feels good enough, even if both sides compromised. This feels good enough. That feels really empowering to people. And, you know, another thing we pride ourselves on is we don't have repeat customers. It's like people, they get that they can navigate these things, and we've given them that sense and a roadmap for that, so that even though, especially parents, right, they're going to have disagreements as time goes by about what's right for the kids and activities and budgets and whatever, but they don't, like, rarely do they come back to mediation for help navigating these future disagreements, because they've learned that they can do it. So yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome. So if somebody wants to find you and your firm, where do they find you at?
So it's a bit of a spelling test. It's consciousfamilylaw.com. And so, yeah, but these days AI will help you get to us if you just, you know, speak conscious family law.
Every time I type you in, now it just populates. So that's good. But yeah, and your website's beautiful. So yeah, anybody should hop on there and just kind of tool around a little bit. So John, thank you so much. I appreciate you spending this time with me and kind of diving into, you know, the world of a mediator a little bit more so that people can understand it. It's definitely something that I am a big believer in, and I wish I could just scream it from the mountaintops, because I do think that most people could untangle through mediation and just end up in a much better space afterwards. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Karla. My pleasure.